Well, the name of my book is The Wrong Side of Murder Creek. And in Lower Alabama, I lived in East Bruton, Alabama. It was separated from Bruton by Murder Creek. In Bruton lived a lot of rich people. You wouldn't think that in South Alabama at that time in the 40s and 50s. But at that time, Bruton, Alabama was the richest town in the United States per capita because of slavery, because of the fortunes made during slavery, and because of the new burgeoning industries in Alabama, mainly around Birmingham. Those families in Bruton, Alabama, and how they all congregated there, I don't know. But when I grew up in East Bruton, Alabama, I heard all my life, as people looked down, boy, you'll never amount to anything. You're on the wrong side of Murder Creek. So I was faced with the same thing that a lot of poor people and a lot of people of color were faced with in this country. Some kind of determined future based on where I was, who I was, and what my circumstances were. So I have to thank this committee. I want to especially thank Dr. Toby Graham for introducing me. And it reminds me of a book that a friend of mine wrote called, let's see, The Politics of Rage. And that was, somebody supplied me with the name, I'm having a... Dan Carter. And Dan Carter said in his book, you know how you always read the few lines about yourself in somebody's book? He said that Bob Zellner, a distinctly secondary character in the civil rights movement, did blah, 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 blah. Well, now that I have the Lillian Smith Award, Dan, in the next edition, would you change that? Because mainly because of this, so when I started out at Huntington College in Montgomery, Alabama, and I told our professor that I wanted to study the race situation in Montgomery, he said, that won't be necessary. I know the assignment is to study the racial problem, but you're supposed to go to the library and read in the library. And we said, five of us said, no, we need to go see Dr. King and Rosa Parks because they made the Montgomery bus boycott. And we said to our sociology professor, didn't it integrate the buses in Montgomery? And he said, yeah, but you can't go there because you'll be arrested. Now, as young sociologists, our interest was piqued. And we said, you mean we could be arrested doing research for a paper? He said, in Montgomery in 1959 you can. But we didn't really go along with it. We went to the meeting. The church was surrounded by the police. And Dr. King came over and said, as I talked to you before the meeting and warned you, you better be prepared to be arrested, the police have now sent word that the 5 of you students will be arrested. And I said, Dr. King, we need to escape. And Dr. King, in that time, that was before he was St. Martin Luther King. He was just a little preacher in Alabama with a great deal of courage. And he said, well, I'm afraid you're going to be arrested. And I said, well, what we really mean is we need to try to escape. And he understood that because we said we don't want to get our parents in trouble, we don't want to get our school in trouble, and so forth. So he said, I tell you what I'll do. I'll go out the front, and maybe if they all run around there, Reverend Abernathy and Mrs. Parks can let you out the back door down in the basement, and you can run for it. So sure enough, he went out the front. All the police ran around to that side, and right before Reverend Abernathy opened the door, Mrs. Parks, the saint that she was, said to me, I don't know why she thought I was the ringleader of the group, but she said, Bob, if you see something wrong, eventually you're going to have to do something about it. You can't study it forever. Reverend Abernathy opened the door, and the funniest thing, 5 little white boys running all out through the black community in Montgomery, trying to get away from our own police. Well, we had stepped over the line, and we had found out what Lillian Smith found out long ago, that when you step over that line, they didn't give you a lot of middle ground. It was very difficult, and Lillian Smith talked about moderates and liberals. Nan Grogan is sitting here, and we often have spit when we've said liberal and moderate. Now, there was a great reason for liberals and moderates in the South, because some people had to be cool so we could still have some reliable rear. But many people were on the front, and we decided that they weren't going to give us any middle ground, and so we would have to rebel. So therefore, I embarked on a life of crime after Rosa Parks said you'd have to do something. Thank you. During that time, I was arrested 18 times in 5 or 6 southern states and some northern states. I was charged with everything from loitering and vagrancy to criminal anarchy. In Louisiana, when Chuck McDougall and I were arrested, they said we did with force of arms attempt to overthrow the government of East Baton Rouge Parish. The government of the state of Louisiana and the United States of America. Later on in Danville, Virginia, we were charged with the John Brown statute, the same law that John Brown was hanged for. We were charged by the state of Virginia to agitating and leading the black population into acts of war and violence against the white population. Now, these are things that you can get into when you believe Rosa Parks, someone as quiet as she is, when you follow someone like Martin Luther King, a man who never amassed any wealth, who gave his entire life to this movement, that things could be better. Now, none of us realized, I think, at that time, that what we were doing, we had no idea of how important it was to our country and to the world. We knew it was important to us. Many of us had come up in the church. My father was a Ku Klux Klan member. My grandfather was a Ku Klux Klan member. My father and mother were both graduates of Bob Jones College, which became Bob Jones University. I'm named after Bob Jones. Bob Jones conducted the wedding ceremony for my mother and father. And I can talk about Bob Jones College today because there's so many gray heads in the audience who know about Bob Jones. Some of the younger people, hopefully you will find out that there are still pockets of poison in the United States where republicanism has lost its course. We have a situation now where health care is discussed in a manner not for what is good for the people, but if we can destroy this black president on this issue, we'll have him and he'll never amount to anything. We don't care about the people. We have a situation where in this country, a president is going to speak to school children, and you tell me one white president ever that would face what he's facing now about talking to school children if he was not black and if he was not progressive on the progressive end. We have a situation now where we have a one-party government. What is left out of the government, and I'm talking about the Democrats right now, they have to get together because the other party, unfortunately, has sold its soul. And they have sold the soul on the name of what we are here today fighting, racism. Yes. That is the only basis for which that is happening. And we, as activists and concerned people, we people of the book, we are people of the book. 25 or 30 years from now, librarians are going to be hunted down. Book clubs are going to be outlawed. Anybody still reading a book will be suspect. Because, first of all, you're old-fashioned. And you believe in the old-fashioned values. They talk about family values, they talk about patriotism. We have almost no patriotism left in this country when one of the major parties can see as their spokesman someone like Sarah Palin. Someone like the other people who are talked about as presidential timber. We have a situation in this country where the other party really has to be redeveloped. It has to be rebuilt. And in the South, we have to rebuild the Democratic Party in the white community. In my own state of Alabama, only 11% of the white vote went to Obama. So we have a polarized place where we have a 1/3 of the country ruling 2/3 of the country. With the money that they have and the propaganda machine they have, we have a big row ahead. This is going to help. My book, The Wrong Side of Murder Creek, has been optioned for a movie. Spike Lee is the executive producer of the movie. The director-writer, thank you. The director-writer is my friend Barry Brown from Montgomery, Alabama, graduate of of the high school Lanier, Sidney Lanier. We're writing this story. It's going to be a major motion picture. I don't know if you know Brian Gosling or Jake Gyllenhaal and so forth. These are the actors that we're talking about playing this guy, Bob Zellner. I don't see it as Bob Zellner anymore. It's the character. So keep an eye on the movie. We've got to get the message out, especially the young people, because they don't know the history. Lillian Smith is a great, great part of that history. Thank you for carrying it on. Thank you.